that just drove me crazy. And I went from like the most motivated person to a person that it is hard for him to get out of bed every morning. So at that point, I said, okay, I have to do something different. I left Rapid7 and went ahead to found PointFive.
What did your wife say when you decided to do this?
I don't like it, but I support you.
I am thrilled to welcome to Invested Alon Arvatz. Welcome, Alon.
Thank you, Michael, for having me.
Alon is a serial founder in the world of cybersecurity. And one of the things we actually haven't delved into on this podcast yet is the world of cyber. And I'm thrilled to have you because literally you wrote the book on cyber. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so tell us about you, Alon. Instead of me introducing you, tell our audience about you.
Sure. So first of all, today I'm the CEO and co-founder of PointFive. Actually, this new startup, which we announced 2 weeks ago, is not in cybersecurity. It's actually in an infrastructure management, cloud infrastructure management. But actually, most of my background is in cybersecurity. So I started my cybersecurity knowledge and experience in 8200, like many other Israelis. Although I had a not true traditional path, I actually started in infantry. And after hurting my earring during shooting training, I actually moved to 8200, which is a whole story for itself.
Well, tell us.
Okay, I'll try to keep it very short.
Okay.
I really wanted to go to infantry, to command a unit. I gave up all my assessment to the intelligence corps, and I said, okay, I want to go to commando. I did, all the tests, all the assessment, and I ended up in Egoz, which is the command unit. Back then it was Golani. And actually through my training, I forgot to put my earplugs one time, and I started hearing beeping. And then I also was assessed with hearing reduction, and they kicked me out of Egoz, basically. And then I was like, okay, what am I doing now? They sent me to the HR of Egoz, by the way. I said, okay.
Commando unit.
Yeah, of Egoz. And I said, okay, I want to do more. I'm capable of doing more. And I just started a whole campaign in the IDF to get out of Egoz and get to the 8200. So I got a pirate interview at 8200. I convinced the commander of Egoz to sign me off. I convinced half of the IDF until I was moved to 8200.
Amazing. Then you became a cyber commando.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you were in 8200 and then you got out of 8200 eventually.
And then I got out of it. I did 1 year of yeshiva.
Talmud study.
Yes, exactly. And then I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I had no idea how you become an entrepreneur. There is no degree in university of entrepreneurship. It doesn't exist. And I had no idea where to start. So I said, okay, I'll go to university. I thought, okay, what can help me as an entrepreneur? I said, okay, law and accounting might be helpful. Big lie. Wasn't helpful whatsoever. But that's what I had in mind. And I also thought to myself, okay, I also have a backup of doing something in the economy ministry, which was also something that I always wanted to do. But as I started my studies, I met a few friends who became my co-founders. The first one was Barak. We founded together my first venture, which was a non-profit for financial literacy for teenagers.
We're going to talk about that soon.
Yeah. And after that, I also already got experience with schools and teaching and building curriculums, etc. And then I decided to found with Guy Cyber School, which was a cybersecurity training and education for teenagers. We sold that company. And then Guy and I and Gal, who served with me in 8200, founded IntSights, which was my first tech startup, basically. Which was sold to Rapid7 for $350 million.
In 2021.
2021. Yes, right. Yes, amazing journey. Yes, amazing journey. We took the company from nothing. It was our first high-tech experience. We had no tech experience before that. We took it to over $30 million ARR. I'm actually a lot more proud of that rather than the amount we sold the company. And after we sold it, we became part of Rapid7. I wrote the book about the Israeli cybersecurity industry and what makes it so successful. It's called The Battle of Your Computer.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about that.
Yeah, for sure. And then PointFive.
How did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Where did that even come from?
That's a very good question because after I sold IntSights, I started giving lectures and talks about my personal journey. And then I had to ask myself, okay, Alon, where does your journey start? Does it start in 8200? And I think it really started when I was like 9 or 10 years old, going to my dad's work. My dad's always been working in the tech industry. He's been CFO of multiple tech companies. And I think like the time when I went with my dad to his office and was amazed by the atmosphere, by the office and how it looks like, etc. I think that was like my first point in time when I felt, okay, I want to do tech and I maybe want to do entrepreneurship. But besides that, I grew up in Israel. Entrepreneurship is many people's dream. This is what you see in the news. This is what perceived as successful in our society. So I guess it all accumulated into very strong motivation to become an entrepreneur myself.
You know, now that you said that, you had mentioned kind of 2 minutes ago that you thought of going maybe into the finance ministry, the economics ministry, to do economic work or policy work. And now in the same breath, you said that part of what's regarded as successful, or let's call it models or people that we model behavior after now, is entrepreneurship. And I think that started, by the way, roughly in the mid-90s, particularly around the ICQ and Mirabilis moment here, where these 4 shaggy-haired guys sold their company to AOL for $400 million. And in the earlier part of the state of Israel, people modeled themselves after army generals. Does it ever worry you that the most talented people today end up not in government and not in the military and not in places that really matter? Because what you said, as a kid, I got inspired by these models of success who are entrepreneurs, and that's the kind of thing people model after.
Right. And I definitely worry because of that, because the government needs very good people. And the bottom line is that many people goes to tech, and many talented people go to tech. So it's definitely a concern. I think that the reason I wanted to go to government, or that was something that I said, okay, something I want to do, that's because of the social impact that it has. So economy has always been a hobby of mine. Since high school, I've been reading about economy, like macroeconomics. But the reason I was considering government is because of my the social impact I want to do and the education I got from home, in my yeshiva, in my high school, of doing something that will be very beneficial and impactful to the state of Israel. So I think that, or let's put it this way, I don't think that the government will be able to give you the same financial benefits as the tech industry.
Yeah, I know, but so what? But this matters. Like, we're in a country,
Right.
and the world's like in a state of war, and Israel's in a state of war, and we've got challenges. And I don't say this to be critical, but if you already raised it, which is you sold a company, and instead of going to government, which you thought was super important and where successful people need to go, you went off and did a second company.
That's true. That's true. But I can tell you that my definitely long-term plan is to do something in the public sector.
How long is long-term? Because we need people to be in the public sector.
I don't know. Right now, I'm really into PointFive, so I'm going to be at PointFive for, as long as it needs me. But my plan is like, I don't know, the next thing or the next thing to do something in the public sector.
The
and
next,
I think,
next thing
yeah.
feels like a long time for talented people like you.
Yeah. And first of all, I'm pretty young, right? I still have many years ahead of me.
How old are you?
And I'm 36.
That's the perfect time. That's even older than the founding fathers of the United States.
Yeah. So relatively young.
Okay. So I want to actually first dig into your book. So you sold IntSights, and then you sit down to write a book. Why'd you write the book?
Yeah. So first of all, I always had a dream to write a book. I love books.
You had a dream to be an entrepreneur since you're 9. How old are you when you had a dream to write a book?
I don't know. But I can tell that since high school, I started reading like nonfiction. And there were a few books that really shaped my philosophy, my perception of life, the way I look at the state, the way I look at policy, the way I look at philosophy. And I felt like books, especially nonfiction, by the way, have a tons of impact. So
wait, which books are those that had a big impact on you?
So the one that I always highlight is Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell, which is an amazing economist, okay, a conservative economist, and he really flipped my entire perception on economy. Like, he made me, I would say, capitalist in many ways. And I was just like reading through the book, and as I was flipping page after page, I realized that it changes everything that I think about economic policy. And I was like, wow, like this person changed my life in a way, the way I look at reality.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized the impact that books have, I started reading more books. And at some point, I wanted to write a book myself.
Amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so tell us about the battle for the computer, for your computer.
So I can tell you that when I sold IntSights and as I was reflecting at my journey, I realized that a lot of my success is actually thanks not only to my personal talent or efforts I put into IntSights, but actually a lot of that was thanks to the ecosystem that was built in Israel. So the investors that have a lot of experience with building cybersecurity companies and guided me through my personal journey, the entrepreneurs that have done it before me and can give me guidance, and the reputation that was actually built through the years. And when I, as an entrepreneur, came and said, okay, I'm from Israel, so people say, oh, you're from Israel, you already get a few points ahead. So that's a reputation that was built through many years, and I got the benefit of it, right? I can tell when I started IntSights, it was actually pretty funny. I didn't know if people like Israel, they don't like Israel, so I always try to avoid mentioning them from Israel. And I also have my yarmulke on my head. So I always try to sit in the Zoom in a way that would, it won't stick out too much. And at some point, I realized that actually being from Israel is an advantage.
It's a feature.
It's a feature, exactly. So when I started my pitch, it always started, I'm from 8200, I'm from Israel. That's how I started. Like that was the baseline of the conversation. Because the reputation was built, was really helpful. So after I realized that, I said, okay, there is an amazing ecosystem that was built through the year. I got the benefit from this ecosystem. It's time, one, to tell this story to the world, how it happened. And from my perspective, it was also a way to show gratitude to all the entrepreneurs that built this industry for me. And I got to ride on their shoulders and build IntSights.
Who are the two most important figures in the book in your mind, the builders of the cyber industry of Israel?
Okay, so the first one is easy. That's Gil Shwed. No doubt about that. CEO of Checkpoint, biggest cybersecurity company in Israel. Okay. I think that Nir Zook deserves a special mention, although Palo Alto Networks is not really an Israeli company. But it has a very big R&D center in Israel. It makes a lot of acquisitions here in Israel, so notable mention. And from the investor side, definitely Gili Ranan. Okay, no doubt about that.
He was your investor also, right?
No,
he was not.
No.
Okay.
Actually, it's a funny story. So when we funded IntSights, we got a term sheet from Gili, back then in Sequoia, and from Glilot, Kobe and Arik. And we actually, and we actually decided to go with Glilot, with Kobe and Arik, and they were amazing partners for us. I don't know how it would have been with Gili. Tell that Kobe and Arik were amazing partners for us, and we're really happy that they went with us and got it through the process. I have to say, but like the entrepreneur that I felt most related to is Miki Budai. And actually,
Miki Budai is one of the
founders of Imperva.
Right, Imperva, together with Shlomo Kramer.
Right, and then Trusteer, and now Transmit Security. I was captured by his humbleness. And actually, the book ends with a quote by Miki. And it's a fascinating quote because I asked every entrepreneur I interviewed to the book, what is the biggest risk or biggest threat to the Israeli cybersecurity industry? And everyone said, lack of talent, lack of people that can actually build products. And Miki was the only one that gave me a different answer. And he said, the biggest threat is hubris. And he was like, we learned nothing from the Yom Kippur War, where we thought we were so powerful and no one would dare fight us. And until today, because we're so successful, we feel like, hey, Israel will continue to lead the cybersecurity industry worldwide, and that's not true. If we don't be humble enough to listen to the industry, to listen to our customers, we will lose our leadership. And it's just amazing how relevant it is to anything that happened to us as a nation in the last year, and since October 7th in specific, because the history just repeats itself. And it repeats itself with our defense and security interests, and it can repeat itself with our cybersecurity industry.
Would it be fair to say, and I really appreciate Mickey's point, would it be fair to say that conflict is healthy for this industry?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's
And
actually imperative for the industry.
for sure. Actually, I write about it in the book. The whole reason that Israel became leader to begin with is because we had challenges that, for example, American entrepreneurs didn't have to face. The fact that we don't have a market here, that the market here is very, very small, and that we had to adapt ourselves to the American market, that was a challenge that allowed us to build very scalable and agile products that are very easy to replicate, to sell, even for partners that live on the other side of the ocean. And that's what allowed us to build amazing products that were also very simple. So a lot of the success of the Israeli cybersecurity industry is thanks to the challenges and the conflict we had in the beginning and until today.
How important is it that, unlike in every other technology ecosystem where somebody goes to college and then at some point decides to get into cyber, here you get into cyber, you're 18, 19, 20, and so you've got all these young guys together for 5 or 6 years, hacking away, and they're probably more daring and less kind of scared when they're 18, 19, 20, so they'll do anything. And maybe the moral sense is less well developed as well. How important is that to the innovation in the Israeli cyber ecosystem?
Yeah. No, it is very, very important. Actually, like the technological unit in the IDF has a huge impact. I always say that, like, if you think of, I went to 8200, okay, and only testify about 8200. 8200 is the place where you wear a military uniform, you have a dining room just right any place in the army, right, with the trays and someone, serving you the cafeteria.
Yeah.
But when you sit down with your friends, you can talk about what startup you will found when you will finish your service, or what is the latest technology that was just announced or published. Like this is the conversation that people having over lunch in the army. So that is a crazy ecosystem to encourage people to go on their personal entrepreneurial journey. By the way, I'm curious, like, what is your perspective as an investor about investing in people that came out straight from the army versus people that went through college and had some experience in the private sector and just then go to become entrepreneurs?
I think it really depends on the area that they're focused on. I think in cyber, you can kind of get away with it coming straight out of the army. And in some parts of data infrastructure, you can. But for the most part, having someone a little more developed, particularly here where you need people to understand markets that are not Israel. This is a small country. I think it's important to have people slightly more mature.
Yeah.
What was the feedback on your book or the pushback?
So first of all, the feedbacks were great. I was also
I never met an author who didn't say the first answer, the feedback on my book was great. And I've written a lot of books, so.
Yeah, so I'll try to be more specific.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I try to be more specific. I also got a lot of good feedbacks about the writing, which was very nice because that's the first book I'm writing, like that it's interesting, it's compelling, etc. I think the biggest compliment I got was from my wife's grandpa, who said, this is the first time I understood what this whole high-tech is all about, right?
I thought you were going to say, okay, after the book, I'm finally happy that you married my granddaughter.
He said something pretty similar and more funny, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
He said, now I know that you can make a living out of tech. Okay.
I have a similar background story with my wife, but on my 15th anniversary, my wife's grandmother called up and said, Mikey, happy anniversary. You know, you're not as bad as we thought you were.
Yeah. So similar comment. I can tell you that a lot of people told me, Alon, the book is missing your personal story. So I put a lot of focus on the industry as a whole, and I guess not too much on my personal story. And people told me, Alon, we want to read this book to also learn about your personal story. And that's very much lacking. So,
interesting tidbit, when Jacob Hellberg's book came out, and he's been a guest on the podcast before, I called him up and I said, it's wild to me how much of your personal story you told at the beginning, because I also, in one of my books, was pushed by my editor to tell more of my personal story I didn't want to. He said, hey, the same thing happened to me. And he said, it turns out that you come to write a book about a topic, but the editors know that people want to read your personal story first to know who they're connecting with, which I found stunning. I got pushed to do the same thing. So.
Right. And also interesting comment. My book is now being translated to Chinese. And yeah, and it's going to be promoting in the Chinese market.
Yeah. Are there any
And-
secrets in there?
No, not really. Not
Okay,
really.
good.
It also went through censorship.
Oh, okay.
They also cut, by the way, a lot of like big areas of my book were cut off in censorship.
Oh, in censorship.
In censorship.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
There's an army censor in Israel that
Yeah.
limits what you can say about things that are secret. Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of it was cut, so it's clear. But funny story, they told me that I have to write a special introduction to the Chinese market to explain the Israeli culture. Because they said that for the Chinese reader, it would just look like fiction. It will be unreliable. The stories being told there about Israeli entrepreneurs. So you have to explain to them the Israeli culture. Like the fact that Shalev Julio was standing in line in the coffee shop and hearing someone talking about what he did in the army. And he was like, wait, what are you talking about? Okay, I need you to connect me to a person that has expertise in phone hacking. That for them would sound unreliable. So you have to do an introduction to explain like the culture. That was fascinating.
You also should tell them that people in Israel don't wait in line.
Exactly.
Really. So, was there any negative backlash to your book?
Not really. I think there were a couple of people that felt they weren't mentioned enough or didn't get enough credit, which always happen when you try to cover a certain topic. But beyond that, mainly positive feedback.
So, if I had to ask you, where's the Israeli cyber industry going and tech going, what would you tell me?
So I'm personally very optimistic about Israeli cybersecurity.
Still bullish.
And tech. Still very bullish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I felt very uncomfortable with some of the articles in the Israeli media lately
Yeah.
about the tech industry, where like the reader might get the perception that investors are pulling their money out of Israel.
Yeah. Yesterday, by the way, data came out that showed that all these same journalists who talked about a downturn investment were all wrong. Yesterday, the data came out.
No,
I've been saying that they're wrong the whole time. There has been
Listen.
no downturn.
Listen, I was reading it and I was like, am I crazy? Because I experienced the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Am I crazy? And I was like, went around and talked to the top investors in the world that have people here in Israel.
Yep.
Like top 10 investors. And they all told me they did investment since October 7th. 2 of them appointed partners in Israel, which mean they're doing strategic investment in Israel to be here for the long term. VCs that weren't doing here investments never started doing investment last year. So my experience is exactly opposite. I think I'm very optimistic, very bullish. I think we should expand beyond cybersecurity. I think we were too much focused on cybersecurity.
Is it too crowded in cybersecurity now here?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is. Okay.
That's why I don't invest there, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can't compete in these crowded businesses
Yeah.
where everyone's looking.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
capable
think it's a bit inflated as well.
Me too.
And I also think that like for our country, it's very important to go beyond cybersecurity. That's part of the reason that my new startup is not in cybersecurity, but in cloud infrastructure management.
Before we go to your new startup, what is kind of the top 2 or 3 cyber companies in Israel that are kind of on your radar now that you say, okay, those are the future checkpoints, those are the future whizzes or whatever it is?
Wow, you mean like early stage or?
I'm not going to. You tell me, the big 3. The big 3 by Alon. Go ahead. The guy who wrote the book on Israeli cyber is giving us his big 3. 1.
Okay, so I personally really believe in Mickey and in transmit security.
Okay.
What they're doing.
Whatever Mickey Boudai does, number 1. Next. Number 2.
Number 2, I think that Island is doing something really great.
What do they do?
Okay. They're doing a browser security. But what I like about them is that they have vision to go beyond browser security.
And they just raised a pile of money, right?
What?
They just raised a lot of money.
Yes.
Who led that round?
I'm sorry?
Who led the round there? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
I don't know. Hopefully when they edit the podcast, they'll put something on the bottom, some subtitle that says who led the round. Go ahead. Number 3 is?
Yeah, number 3. Wow, that's a good question.
Mickey Boudai and Island stood out quickly, but number 3 is tough. Who's number 3?
No, number 3 is tough. That's It's a good question. I don't know. I need to think about it. I'll get back to you. Maybe by the end of the podcast, I'll get you the number 3.
Okay. So tell us about PointFive.
Okay, so actually PointFive is the born child of our personal experience at Rapid7. So at Rapid7, we became part of a very big engineering organization of thousands of engineers, and also part of their overall efforts of cloud cost optimization. And there we really faced all the challenges around actually getting the engineers to take action. Because today engineers aren't really involved in the whole process of optimizing the infrastructure and reducing cloud costs. Today, cloud infrastructure is the number 2 cost driver for organizations after people, after human capital. And it's a big, big issue to all organizations. So we decided to chase after cloud cost optimization, but actually build a solution for engineers. So instead of going after the finance people or people that have more finance background, go after engineers or FinOps that are leaning more toward tech. They're part of the engineer organization, and actually build a solution that will motivate and give engineers the tool they need to actually drive action. This is how we started. And actually, over time, we realized that the infrastructure we built can serve other aspects of cloud infrastructure management for engineers. So actually can facilitate different types of infrastructure management and DevOps use cases that are not pure cost. So we started building our cost suite, and now we're slowly expanding beyond cost to also help organizations drive action across the engineering organization to manage anything related to infrastructure.
Do you love this idea?
Very much.
You know you love this idea.
How?
Because Tamar Yoshua told me to ask you, why did you leave Rapid7 early before you vested to go do this thing?
Exactly. We had 2.5 year of holdback period.
Yeah.
And I left after 1 year just because we got really excited about the space, about the idea. And I really felt like I have to get back to entrepreneurship.
Where did that feeling come from? I mean, you left real money on the table.
I left a lot of money on the table. So first of all, to be honest,
Yeah.
I felt like I have like enough money for what I want to do in life.
Yeah.
So like getting more money, which is a lot of money, but more money won't change my life. So that was a certain baseline. But just being, part of a big corporate, which everything is so slow, it's a lot of bureaucracy, and you're not making the decisions, really lowered my energy. And people that are not entrepreneurs, like for them, it's very hard to understand because I basically, after the acquisitions, continued to do the same thing, work on the same product. I had more or less the same role of leading the product and product management for the same product, like more or less the same. But like the fact that you're not making the decisions, it's not yours, it's so slow, you're dependent on someone in Boston to approve any little thing you want to do, that just drove me crazy. And I went from like the most motivated person to a person that it is hard for him to get out of bed every morning. So at that point, I said, okay, I have to do something different. I left Rapid7 and went ahead to found PointFive.
What did your wife say when you decided to do this?
I don't like it, but I support you.
She doesn't like it. Why?
No.
Because it's all-encompassing to be founder, or because you left the money
Yeah.
on the table?
No. So my wife, it's not about the money.
That was after her grandfather said that he now knows you can make a living, and then you left it behind.
Exactly. No, it's just that, life in a corporate, they're a lot more easygoing. And
Yeah.
I had more, I wouldn't say time because I was still working like full time. I think it's more attention maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. It's very hard to balance entrepreneurship and family. I think I'm making improvement over time in doing the right balance.
Does your wife think you're making improvement over
I
time, or do you
I
think so?
I don't think she's satisfied
Yeah.
with where I'm at. Like, she still believes I can do more improvement.
Yeah.
But I definitely made improvements since my early entrepreneurship years,
Uh-huh.
where I left her in certain situations. She always liked to tell a story where on our way, and actually I'm pretty embarrassed about telling this story retrospectively, but as a young entrepreneur, that's what I did. And actually, on our way to the hospital, like when she was feeling like, how you call it, like the pains before giving birth. Contractions. I asked her if we can go through a certain place. I don't remember if it was like to give a lesson in cyber school or to pick up something for cyber school, okay, on our way to hospital. So then I'm very embarrassed to tell that.
For your first child?
For my first child. Yeah. So, but that's what happened. That's the reality.
And you stopped?
No, I didn't.
No, but you did ask her.
I did ask her if it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're still married?
Yes.
And there have been more kids
I told
since.
you, I'm making improvement.
I was sitting there thinking, at the beginning of the podcast, you talked about the fact that you had some hearing loss from your time in the Army because you put the earplugs in. I'm thinking that might serve you well.
It did. Back then, it felt like the biggest disaster that ever happened and ever will happen to me.
Yeah.
That's how it felt.
Yeah. And now it's helped your marriage because you don't hear when your wife's yelling at you.
Exactly.
And help you there. So, David Politis, I don't know what the right way to say his last name is, of Better Cloud. He said, I should ask you this. He thinks you're being very deliberate in your approach to building PointFive, and you're more calculated than he has seen in many other places. And he wants to know, where does that come from? Is it because of your previous founding experience? You're trying to do it a different way? Is this just how you operate? He says you're a super deliberate guy. That felt so un-Israeli to me. I didn't know how to relate.
Wow, that's an interesting insight. I think that I'm a pretty deliberate person.
Yeah.
That's how I grew up in many ways. And I would even say that I'm trying to coach myself to be less deliberate.
Nice.
Because I feel that, and that's very interesting, because I feel that if you take my co-founder guy, Nitzan, which I built cyber school with him, and IntSights, is the exact opposite. He likes to go with his intuition. He makes decisions on the spot, not that calculated in many ways. Amazing entrepreneur, by the way. And I really, after working with him for a while, actually learned the advantage of being more or less deliberate and working more with your intuitions and making decisions on the spot. And actually, since then, over time, I tried to learn from him as we're working together. And I'm trying to coach myself to be a bit less deliberate. So I can never be a different person. I'll always be this calculated, deliberate person that want to do things, in a very focused way and doing things right.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm actually trying to balance it with fast decision-making and going more with my intuitions when I realize that, doing the calculations won't get me that far.
So you and I are co-invested in Dream, Shalev Julio's company you mentioned earlier, him from The Line, overhearing the people who hack telephones, as you covered in your book. How is it to be an angel investor in cyber companies, and why do you do it?
So first of all, just so you know, I stopped investing in startups.
You stopped?
I stopped.
Why is that?
I stopped. So you have to ask yourself why to invest in startups. One reason is to make money. And as I told in the beginning, I don't feel like I need to make more money. And I would definitely want spend or invest a lot of time in making more money. That's not how I operate. So that's a very basic baseline. The other reason I wanted to do that is to learn about new technologies, about new trends, investing, really open your minds to what happens out there. But I think that I just realized that before I want to do an investment, maybe because I'm a calculated, deliberate guy, it just takes me a lot of time to do that. A time that now as an entrepreneur, I don't have. So basically at some point I said, okay, I don't have the time. I don't really need the money. So I just stopped doing it. I feel sorry that I don't support early stage entrepreneurs that maybe need my support, need me to be there to support them. That's the drawback of not doing that. But still, I don't feel like I really have the capacity to do it the way I want to do it as an investor. And also, to be frank, investing is a profession. It's an expertise. I feel you have to really invest time and to learn how to do it right if you actually want to do invest. Specifically, Shalev, it was very easy. I was told that Shalev is building a company. I said, I'm in. And the reason is that after interviewing multiple entrepreneurs here for my book, I just felt like Shalev is one of the best entrepreneurs today in Israel. Like, he's not the typical entrepreneur. He's not the one that went to 8200. He's not the tech geek. But he's so, courageous. There's no fear. If he wants to do something, he'll just go ahead and do it. And for me, it's really inspiration from that perspective.
Yeah.
Okay?
I agree.
So when I heard that he's doing something, I knew that I'm going to put my money there because I'm not sure what it is, but it's going to be good.
Yeah. You didn't have to think that much about it.
Yeah,
it sounds like.
exactly.
So I actually want to ask you about cyber school. So this is really your first entrepreneurial venture. Why did you set up something called cyber school? Like, there is 8200, right? There are other units in the military. What was the purpose of cyber school? Like, why'd you have to get kids in high school before they go to the army?
Yeah, so it actually came from, I would say, like my social impact point of view.
But it was a business, right?
It was a business.
Yeah,
It was a business. So my first venture was a nonprofit for financial literacy.
I'm coming to that in a second. But I
Yeah,
want to
that's
talk
my
about
first.
cyber school
But cyber school in
specifically.
specific, first of all, I wanted to build like a business,
Yeah.
right? But I felt there is also a very big importance in getting kids into cybersecurity. Sometimes kids that don't have this opportunity from home, so getting into these schools and get people exposed or kids exposed, and I'm talking about kids that not everyone had, like me, a dad that worked in the high-tech industry since he remembers himself. So it was about giving opportunity and actually strengthen Israel.
Yeah, but
as a
most people
country.
think of doing something like that. Like, even 8200 has this project called Magshimim, where they go into high schools and train kids. This is a for-profit business, so people have to pay money. Parents paid money
Right.
to get their kid into Alon Arvatz's cyber school. Probably the kid could get prepared or whatever it is. It's like, for 8200, it's like the Kaplan prep tests in America for the SATs, right? If you can pay and you can afford to do them, so you can get ahead and maybe get into a bad Ivy League university
Right.
or whatever the case is, right? That's gone corrupt. But why?
I understand.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just not a black or white answer.
Yeah.
I think it was a mix of I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to build a business or learn how to build a business, and the social impact. I think what was so great about cyber school is that it allowed me to mix these two motivations that always coexisted in me.
Sure.
That's why I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I want the fallback to work for the government, for example. Because that's always two things that I feel like I have to balance, like the social impact and also my dreams and aspirations of building businesses here in Israel.
When you're 50, what do you want to be?
Ooh, so I told you, definitely in the public sector.
Like what? What do you want to be? What's the job?
Probably the treasury minister. That's my big dream, probably.
Minister of the Treasury.
Yes. So like I told you, macroeconomics always been a passion of mine. After I finish to do my time in the private sector, I definitely want to do something in the public sector.
You want
that
to
we
run
have-
for office, or you hope to get appointed to the Treasury
I
Secretary?
have no idea. I still haven't figured out
Government
my
needs
journey.
good people like you.
It needs good people for sure.
Yeah,
I hope like me.
So, like, at this intersection of like public policy and business and cyber and kids and whatever, like, how do you think about if you had to distill, like, what your core value is? What is it?
My core value. That's a very good question.
I get paid extra for asking
Yeah,
these
yeah,
questions,
yeah.
just so you know.
Yeah. So first of all, I can tell you that I'm a religious person. So the main thing that drives me is my connection with God. That's the number one. And I feel that the main thing that God expects me is to make this world a better place. As much of a cliche as it sounds, I feel that's what he expects me, to be a better person and to have a positive impact on the world. And I really, really believe that what I do allows me to have the biggest impact on Israel, on the world as a whole. And that's exactly why I do it. And I wake up in the morning every day. Now, again, you asked me what is the core thing. That is the core thing. There are a lot of motivations around that. And I shared with you most of them through our conversation so far, right? But if you take me like to what is like the most basic point, I think that is the basic point.
This leads me to the question about your first nonprofit organizations, Kanfey Kesef, which means wings of money.
Exactly.
Maybe money has wings. I'm not sure. Like, why did you start that, and what was it about?
So it started when I went to university
Right. So
and
you were
started
like
studying
24,
accounting.
25. It's like,
No, that was like around 2011, more or
right.
less.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were
2011?
2011. So you were then 23.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I was 23
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
24.
Yeah.
I was 24, and actually, when I started learning accounting, I felt like I'm learning things that are really, really basic that everyone should know.
Even though your father was a CFO, you
Yeah.
thought they were basic. Okay.
Exactly,
keep going.
exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't. By the way, I didn't get financial education at home
Interesting.
whatsoever. Although both of my parents were finance people. Like my mother is an economist, and my dad has always been a CFO. So I've never got any financial education. And I was like, how can I finish like 12 years of school and I have no clue on how to manage money and how to work with money?
The cobbler's children have no shoes.
Exactly. And that led me to the understanding that it is really important to teach kids about finance and about what is money and how to work with money. I also felt it's a way to bridge gaps, like social gaps between people that have less capabilities and come from a like a lower socioeconomic level. And that led me to say, okay, why don't I go and teach as financial literacy in schools? And that's how we started. I always like to say that like the scariest meeting I always ever had as an entrepreneur was meeting with this teacher in the first school we pitched our financial literacy course and trying to convince her to take us to teach in her school. That was a lot more scary than meeting the investor at IntSights, which we wanted to raise from him like $30 million.
Why was that more scary?
Because the first time that I told someone, you need to pay me money for the services I provide you. That's it. And it was just scary.
And did they agree?
Yes.
Amazing. And do you have any idea where the first students of your financial literacy course are today? Have you kept track of them?
Not really, but I know that one of my first students at cyber school actually, 3 years ago, started working 4 floors below me. So I think we're like floor 11. He started working, and suddenly one is floor 8. And one day I see him in the elevator. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, who are you? I'm telling him, I'm Alon. I taught you cybersecurity in your high school right now. And he was like, oh my God, that's right. And I was, what happened with you since we last met? So he told me, I got into this like intelligence technological unit. And just last week, I started working in this tech company on the 8th floor. And we're talking since then. His name is Sagi, by the way. And we're in touch since then. I hope that one day he'll come to work with PointFive. I'm still trying to convince him.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How many students did you teach about financial literacy?
Wow, in the hundreds.
In the hundreds?
Yes.
So when I asked you your core value, you said that you think God wants you to make this a better world. How is financial literacy related to that?
So I think that it's really... so let's put it this way. If you have a lot of money, you don't need financial literacy. Okay? You can waste money. You don't have to be that considerate. If your capabilities are limited from financial perspective, it is really, really important to know how to manage your money. And actually, my dad always used to say, when there is no money, love goes escape out of the window. Okay? So that's something that I always heard like as a child. And I think that, again, if your funds are limited, you have to learn how to manage them very carefully. So I think that financial literacy, that's the way for people on, I don't know, average classes to have a good life, to have a life where they can support their kids, support their families, and actually build a fulfilling family lives.
If you were the finance minister of Israel today, the treasury minister of Israel today, and I said, there's 10 million people here, we need to make them all financially literate or all financially stable, what would you do?
I would say that that's the wrong task. I would say that you have to start very, very early with the education ministry
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that kids know financial literacy since they're 10.
There's a fair amount of studies that suggest that teaching financial literacy doesn't work. I don't know why that's the case, but I'm pretty certain that's the case. And in fact, just kind of running people, like current approaches, we use technology products, like here in Israel, we use Rise Up, and some of these kind of neobanks have stuff to help people kind of engage in being financially responsible rather than trying to teach financial literacy.
So I will tell you what I think. I think that generally, teaching anything without support from the parents, without support from home, has very small impact.
Yeah.
And I think our task...
Says the guy who's CFO, father, and economist, mother didn't teach him financial literacy.
No, but again, I think that's the whole point. If you listen to my story, my story start as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I get it. I was kidding you.
Right? And it all started with my parents supporting me.
Yeah.
So I feel without the support from the parents from home, it's very hard to make an impact.
Yeah.
But I think that if you make it something that being taught in school from a very early stage, and at some point you're being tested on that, that will make it something that will become very, very important. And eventually parents or the next generation will realize how important it is.
You are a product of like a combat unit, a commando unit, and then an intelligence unit. You are a successful product of the Israeli entrepreneurship system that you chronicle in your book. If I had to ask you to tell me the difference between Israeli entrepreneurs and let's just say American entrepreneurs, which you're spending a lot more time with now, what are the core differences?
You mean like through the years?
Yeah, what causes them to be different is maybe the better way to ask the question.
So like startups today, I just feel like the Israeli industry has really matured in many ways. Okay. One, you have second-time founders who are actually motivated by different motivations. So second-time founders typically would lean more toward a quick exit and more towards building big companies that can last for the long term. So I think that is something that makes one difference. The other one, I think that Israel is over time also learned to do go-to-market.
Mm-hmm.
I think like traditionally, Israel was a really good tech hub because we have very good engineering expertise here. But like go-to-market has always been something that we outsourced to the US. And there's a lot of logic to that because basically our market is in the US.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that over time, we'll learn more how to do or manage go-to-market as Israelis, and that will allow Israeli companies to build their headquarters in Israel over time. And I can tell my personal dream is actually to come back to Israel one day with PointFive and make sure that our headquarters is being built here.
We should tell the listeners that you're now spending time in
I
the U.S.
actually
on the
moved
East Coast in New Jersey to set up the headquarters for
Exactly.
your company.
So for me, it's like more going there to build our sales and marketing teams.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I look at it. For a few years, like as long as it takes. But my plan is that at some point, I do want to come back here and make sure that we establish the headquarters in Israel.
If you had a choice to send your children for their quote-unquote education to an Ivy League university or the Israeli military, where would you send them?
The Israeli military.
Why?
Because of the soft skills that you gain in the Israeli military.
Be specific.
Okay, so first of all, if you go to infantry, by the way, you get a lot of things. I can tell personally, as a person that, by the way, I only been to infantry for 6 months.
Yeah.
But still, from my 6th month, I gain endurance. I've gained values. For example, I will always do my obligations before I take advantage of my rights. That's something that's from my military education. And the idea that I can always do better than I think I can do. That's something I learned in infantry you cannot get anywhere else. In A200, for example, so the creativity, the tech experience that you get there that is very, very unique. The network, and you actually get there some level of confidence that you can become an entrepreneur in a very early stage. It's just something in the air. It's something in the reserve duty people that come to work with you, and suddenly you say, oh my God, this person is like 25, and you already founded a startup. And how Nadav Tzafir was the 8200 commander when I served. And he was like...
He's the founder of Team 8.
Yeah, he's the founder of Team 8. Exactly. He told me, like, when this 8200 soldier see this reserve duty person come and work with him, and, like, he's looking at him, okay, he's already an entrepreneur. And he's like, okay, if this idiot can open a startup, I can also open a startup, right? It's only become something that's realistic. I can also do it. And this is something you can get only in 8200.
I said, I don't know, a few months into the war that after I had visited the 8200 unit during the war, that it was the greatest hackathon of all time because everybody, 4, 5, or 6 generations of people in 8200 all come back and brought in mattresses. And you had kind of young and old developing incredible stuff, and we'd see incredible innovation as the war continued and after the war just out of these people. Do you agree with that assessment?
To some extent, yes.
So that's a soft no.
No, it's not a soft no. It's not soft. I will tell you what. A lot of people ask me, Alon, have you been called to reserve duty after October 7th? And I told them, honestly, I'm not sure if that's relevant anymore. Like, I have no idea what systems they use today. By the time they would train me, others can do a lot more. So I actually think that the people that actually finish their service, I would say in the last 5 years, are a lot more relevant and will have a lot more impact rather than someone that was released like 10, 15 years ago.
There's real cross-pollination between the generations that can kind of create, I think, interesting innovation, or you don't think so?
I do think so. But when you have like an emergency, you really need the people that know the work and get things done very quick, rather than brainstorming and finding like very innovative solutions. Actually, I hope that they will do it for the long term, these brainstorming exercises.
Alon, if you run into somebody who had at least a similar background to you, he comes out of 8200 right now, what advice would you give to him or her to start their entrepreneurial journey?
So I have 2 main tips. One, choose the space you want to become an expert in. This is very important because you want to develop accumulative expertise that then you can leverage to your entrepreneurial journey, whether it's cybersecurity or infrastructure, which is most typical in Israel, or something else, fintech maybe, whatever it is that you're passionate about. And actually, number 2 is go work for a startup. So go see how it happens firsthand. Now, that's a funny advice because I didn't do that. I went straight ahead to entrepreneurship. But I have to say, I do feel that I was a bit lucky, honestly. That's my honest feeling. And I think like at least doing one session or one period of time working for a startup, understanding how it happens, understand the terminology, get connected to entrepreneurs and learn from them how to build a startup, I think that can be extremely helpful for you when you will build your own startup.
So 2 last questions. You spoke on Fox right after the war started about how Hamas leveraged crypto for funding the war. Is this still going on, and what's being done to stop it?
First of all, I have to give you a compliment about your background research. The best that I've ever seen.
I have the best team out
You
there.
have the best team out there.
Full stop.
Yeah, so honestly, I'm not up to date with the status today of cryptocurrency and Hamas. I would guess that the answer is yes.
Mhm.
Just that crypto is a very easy way to get funds without being I don't know, scrutinized or without being, subject to different regulations or sanctions. So I would bet they use crypto. I'm not sure to what extent.
What would you do to stop it?
Honestly, the main thing that we should do to stop it is like like on ground intelligence to identify the accounts they're using, okay, and cooperate with banks and with cryptocurrency wallet management providers like Coinbase, for example, and just shut down their wallets.
Got it. My final question to you goes back to something you said about your parents, and maybe your wife's grandfather too. So you have children of your own now.
Right, 4 of them.
What are you teaching them?
Great question. um, so first of all, I teach them values before anything. Values, Jewish tradition. That's always number one priority. I'm not very successful with that, but I'm doing my best to learn with each of my kids at least a few times a week. Bible, Tanakh. So that's my effort. For me, like Jewish tradition is number one. Number two is tools for life. So tools for life, I would say English, very, very important. All of my kids went to like private English lessons since they're 3 or 4. And now that we're in New Jersey, they learn a lot more, obviously. Two, I think that learning technology is very important because I think that when they will grow up, one, there will be a lot more technological jobs than non-technological jobs. There will be a lot more tech companies than non-tech companies. And even for non-tech jobs, technology will be used extensively,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's AI or any other technology around computers that they will use. So our world become a lot more technological. So I think that's number two. And number three, it's believing in themselves, something that served me tremendously through the years, and aspiring to do great things.
Amazing. Although I noticed you didn't mention financial literacy.
That's true. That's true.
Alon, thank you so much for joining us on Invested. And I encourage everybody to buy the book and read it, The Battle for Your Computer. Alon Arvatz is the author. It's the story of Israeli cybersecurity. And if you want to learn more about Alon, check him out on LinkedIn at Alon Arvatz. That's ALONARVATZ. Thanks, Alon.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Good to have you.